I've now had my Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus for well over 6 months and I've gotten a pretty good impression of the experience. Maybe that experience is even better than on the Note 10, but more on that later. So let's start out simple with the design. It has a glass back and an aluminum frame along with a horizontal triple camera system. A power button on the right side, just a bit too far up, and the volume and Bixby buttons on the left side of the phone. And of course, let's not forget the headphone jack, which has sadly become an increasingly rare sight on smartphones over the last few years. The S10 is a beautiful phone. It's almost a shame to put a cover on it. Moving on to the screen, the edges are curved. This is not the case on the cheaper S10e, and it features an almost bezel-less design. Almost. Samsung's solution was to add a slight chin at the bottom, which isn't really a big problem, and a camera cutout in the top right corner of the screen. This cutout is smaller on the non-Plus versions. That cutout is probably the most annoying thing about the S10. Fortunately, the unusual 19.5 by 9 aspect ratio tends to hide it pretty good in apps, and you do get used to it over time. As for the screen itself, it's an 1440p dynamic AMOLED, as Samsung calls it. It also has HDR10 Plus support, so nothing to complain about there. Moving on to the back again, we see the triple camera system with the main 12 megapixel snapper, the 12 megapixel 2x zoom lens and the 16 megapixel ultra-wide. The ultra-wide and zoom lenses actually proved surprisingly useful when taking pictures. You can take some pretty stunning shots with the help of those. As for the quality, it's what you would ask for in its 2019 flagship phone. And while 12 megapixels isn't a lot, it does the job. The front camera system is a 10 megapixel camera, which on the S10 Plus only is accompanied by an RGB depth sensor that helps out if you want to artificially blur the background. All cameras support 4K 60fps video recording. The main 12 megapixel also supports fancy things like OIS, dual pixel autofocus and dual aperture. OIS is also a thing on the telephoto lens. I need to say I'm not impressed with the camera app. The fact that you need to swipe to even switch to video mode, and that there's no pro mode for video or the ultra-wide and telephoto lens just doesn't make much sense. I also miss the picture-in-picture mode from my S5. What about low-light performance? Well, I would say it does a good job. Not fantastic, but good enough, especially considering that it's a smartphone. However, you shouldn't expect to get good low-light photos with the ultra-wide or telephoto lens. There's a dedicated night mode, but I'm not sure if I prefer that over just the normal photo mode. The dedicated night mode tends to make things a little too bright. Now, the S10 has this new under-display ultrasonic fingerprint reader, which is really cool and maybe even more useful than conventional fingerprint sensors on the back of phones. It was a little unreliable at first, but either updates or just me getting better at using it fixed the issue. The fingerprint sensor on the S10e is on the side of the phone. You also get facial recognition, but no iris scanner, unfortunately. Now I want to talk about some of the often overlooked parts of the phone. One of them is the speakers, which on the S10 seriously impressed me. Not only can they go quite loud, but the audio quality is also decent. Of course, it's not as good as any dedicated speaker, but for a phone, it's very good. The Wi-Fi performance, on the other hand, is not the best I've seen. The speed is alright, but the range is my main issue. I need to be relatively close to the router to establish a connection, but when I have a connection, I have coverage in almost the entire house, so I'm not really sure what to say there. the S10 does support the new AX, aka Wi-Fi 6 standard, so we'll have to see if that's going to improve the situation. Let's move on to the internals. The phone is powered by either Snapdragon 855, that is in the US, South America and China, or the Exynos 9820 in the rest of the world. These are both high-end SoCs, so nothing to worry about there, the performance is great. The S10 Plus is available with 8 GB of RAM and 128 GB of storage. But there's also an option for 512 GB of storage and an option for a terabyte and a whole 12 GB of RAM. On the normal S10 it's 128 and 8, and there's also a 512 GB model. And on the E it's either 128 and 6 GB or 256 with 8. So that's plenty of storage for all your apps and photos and so on, along with more than enough RAM, especially if you're up for a 12 GB model. Now, the battery capacity is 4100 mAh on the Plus, 3400 on the normal and 3100 on the E. That may not sound like much, but trust me, chances are you will get through the day just fine, unless you do a lot of intensive stuff like gaming, of course. The S10 of course supports wireless charging and even wireless power share, which is essentially reverse wireless charging where the phone turns into a wireless charger. So that's pretty cool. Now, the software is Android 9 Pie with Samsung's new One UI on top, which also features a dark mode, by the way. That makes for a pretty good experience, no complaints there unless you really need that stock Android. Now, would I recommend the S10 Plus or the other S10s? Definitely. It's a great phone, very well rounded, it has all the features you'd expect. There are some small annoyances, but overall I would say it's a solid 9 out of 10, maybe a 9.5 out of 10. But what about the Note 10, I hear you asking? Well, unless you want the S Pen, the S10 Plus is probably a better bet. Not better than the Note 10 Plus, but that's super expensive. So with a headphone jack, high resolution display, bigger battery, expandable storage, it's the better choice over the Note 10. And you can find the S10 Plus for relatively cheap compared to its own launch price and the Note 10. And that sums up my review of the Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus. If you have any questions, ask them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and maybe even consider subscribing. I'll see you in the next video.